Hey guys, we're here with a special guest today, Dave, who finished top 8 at Montreal Regionals with Spellbook RUNIK, which is super interesting. Maybe you can share your thoughts in terms of, maybe what the win condition of this deck even, and also why you decided to play it.
Yeah, hi guys. First, thanks for having me on the channel. Well, the win comes deck it's a pure control deck in the most brutal sense of the way. Like, because you have to win the game, each game twice. You have to win the game by locking your opponent out of the game using Jowgen and making sure they cannot get rid of it ever. You cannot negate it. It's protected. And then you have to actually win the game by doing something like decking them out with the runic cards. So, like, you first lock them out, and then you perform an actual win condition, which you might expect takes some time.
Okay, and any shoutouts before we begin?
Yes, actually, I have a big shout out to make. Like, usually, I pride myself into building my own decks. I was working on this deck towards the end of the week, but it wasn't clicking for me. And I watched the video of a player named Jordan Devereaux, which I rarely like watch that profile. I'm like, okay, this does it for me. This clicks, touches the right buttons. All the arguments were the usual arguments that I try to find for each card choice in my deck. So this deck is extremely similar. Main deck's like 2 cards off, and that because he was playing 42, I'm playing 40, and he played those 40 in his 42. Extra deck is the same. Side deck is my own, but some of these cards were in his ideas in the video I watched. So Jordan, if you're watching this, I'd really like to work with you with some decks in the future. I think we have minds that think alike.
Okay, well, I'll link that down below, and yeah, let's just get into the list then.
All right, so Spellbook RUNIK. So there's quite a few spell cards and very little monsters. There's the 3 Spellbook Mansion of Prophecy. Basically acts as a spellbook because it gives you one. The fact that it's a body and it's a level 2 gives you your synergy with your runic spells with Jowgen. So play 3, you gotta have all the options, and then for the monsters you have 2 Jowgen the Spiritualist. For the newer players out here, if you don't know what this card does, from Labyrinth to Nightmare, both players cannot special summon. Also has an ignition effect that's actually pretty useful, is that you can discard a card at random, destroy every special summon monster on the field, which does come up quite a lot, even sometimes to destroy itself, because most of the time you're going to have it being a special summon monster itself. So the game plan is to have Jowgen chill on the field, protect it, and meanwhile you slowly deck them out. There's a reason for 2 Jowgen specifically, because usually when you play an engine with cards you don't want to draw, usually play only one. But if you play one of those, if you like the odds of you drawing it, especially in a deck that does draw cards before it actually summons it, they get like towards something like 20%, and increases if you manage to draw more cards. But if you play 2 of them, like, you get like an additional 5% to draw one of them, but the odds of drawing all the Jowgens in your deck decrease to about 1%. So it gets pretty much impossible to draw both of them during your first turn, so you won't screw yourself. I did check if there was a way to put it back. Having level 2 access meant I could use Herald of the Pure Light in the deck to add back a monster to put a card in my hand back into my deck. But on the first turn, you probably don't have any monsters in the graveyard, and there's very few monsters in this deck. So that was not something that was viable. Having 2 is actually pretty important, because there is sometimes that you will blow up your first one or tribute your first one intentionally to further your protection board, and then summon the second one. And that's it for all the monsters. Next up is 35 spell cards. Got 3 Spellbook of Secrets. Not much to say. That it's just that this card is every spellbook in your deck. It's even Spellbook Mansion of Prophecy. So option select is always a great thing. And then there's the newly unlimited Spellbook of Judgment. There is one less tactical reason to play this deck, one which is more like, okay, this format's pretty open. We're after a ban list. There's not a new set released yet. So most decks aren't all that strong. So if you're going to play something a little bit rogue-ish, that might be the time. And I wanted to have newer players experience the misery we had of playing against Spellbook of Judgment back in 2013. So if you experienced this back then, I promise you it was pretty fun to have people look up at this card, having to read it, and then me doing like +4, +5, +6 during the end phase. And if you're watching the video right now and you don't know what it does, go check it out. It's pretty important for the next part. Then the 3 Spellbook of Knowledge. Spellbook of Knowledge is the one that lets you draw cards. It was actually not released back when Spellbook of Judgment was around. Most spellbooks aren't that great. Big synergy with the spellbooks and the runicks. Obviously, runicks are spell cards that power Spellbook of Judgment, but it also thins your deck a lot. You resolve Spellbook of Judgment, most spellbooks are out of your deck by the end of turn 2, like almost all of them. So your deck is basically all runicks at this point. There is nothing left. So every fountain draw is going to go into other runicks. So this on the first turn is great to get spell activations and dig through your deck. On the second turn, you will have gotten another one off of Judgment. So you will draw 2 more, and those are most likely going to be runicks. There was an argument before the tournament that there's a card I really wanted to play, which is Spellbook of Life, which revives a spellcaster from the graveyard, which I thought gives you it makes the deck more forgiving, right? Because let's say something happens, you get something you can search off of your deck to revive your Jowgen and get the thing going once again, easy. But then I was like, okay, but if I don't get to that point where the deck actually does its thing, I won't have the problem of having my deck succeed at doing what it does, then fail, then get it back up. I'd rather my deck work the first time. So I maxed out in the most consistent card, even if it strips you of one option later down. And the only card I could think to remove would have been 1 Knowledge. So I did choose the 3 Knowledge. One thing to note, because it was around back then, sometimes you don't need the spell to count for your Spellbook of Judgment, because only spells that are activated and resolved after this resolves will count. You can activate Knowledge and chain the Spellbook of Judgment, since cards are sent to the graveyard at the end of the chain and not when they resolve. When Knowledge resolves, Judgment is on the field still, so you get to send it to the graveyard as part of Knowledge. So you basically trade these 2 for 2 cards, but you get the Judgment effect as well. This won't count as a spell activation, but since you're playing 33 other spells, probably going to get there. Last 2 spellbooks are the utility ones, Spellbook of Wisdom, Spellbook of Fate. Spellbook of Wisdom is probably the one you want to get on the first turn if you can protect your Jowgen from impermanence or other spell trap interactions, but usually it's on the first turn, it's impermanence. Spellbook of Fate is your spellbook removal. You search this during the end phase most of the time with your Spellbook of Judgment. Sometimes you don't have any way you can pull off to protect the Jowgen with the rest of your deck. So you're going to search for this one instead, because Jowgen only has 1300 defense. But most of the time, you're going to search this during the end phase. If you don't need it right now, it's okay. But I did a lot of Judgment, search, few spellbooks, summon Jowgen, and use Fate to get rid of a card immediately. Especially good against Fire King. You perform your turn. Even if I obliterate a board of 6 monsters by using Fate to banish their Fire King Island, so they can't protect it with Sanctuary. Jowgen was on the field, blew up 6 monsters. None of them could activate their effects. So very important to have. And then the runic part of the deck, you got the 2 fountain, like traditional one, 3 tips, 3 freezing cures, 3 flashing fires. Actually, something to say about flashing fire. It's funny because flashing fire, once your strategy is established, is actually a card that does nothing, because there is not going to be any more special summon monsters on the field. Like beyond that point. I mean, that's a very big problem. I did find sometimes that, okay, I resolved Fountain, and now I have like 2 Flashing Fires in my hand, and I can't summon with them because I have Jowgen. I can destroy anything because nothing has been special summoned since then. So is there a world where you want to play some, like one of the worst one, like Smiting Storm, because you can activate it under Jowgen just to get Fountain going? Maybe. Like, when you get to that point, you probably win anyway. But it's just a thought I had while playing it. Then it's 3 Destruction. Destruction is great because banishing 4 is actually one of the ones that makes the decking out go faster. And then Slumber, which is in this deck extremely important. Like, it's probably the second best runic spell after Tip in this deck. Because it allows you to blink an attack that would overrun your Jowgen. So you get to Slumber every turn to protect it if your Fountain gets going. So you deck them out while maintaining your lock. Then we have the newly unlimited Upstart Goblin, which counts as a free spell activation for Judgment. It's not really for playing a 37 card deck. This deck draws a lot, so obviously you can't play Prosperity. So this is really for the free spell activation. Sometimes you just have to use it before, though. Then there's one Ghost Trick Shot. This is part of an engine with the Ghost Trick cards, like we've seen with the Ghost Trick Perulian Master Duel. Has multiple functions. I'll get to why the engine requires only 1 spell. I'll get to why when we get to the extra deck. And then to round up the deck, there's the 3 Forbidden Droplets. The only difference is Jordan also played 41st and 42nd card, which was 2 enemy controllers. And after playing the deck, there is sometimes that Droplet was great for me. There was also times I was like, maybe I would have preferred enemy controller. And like thinking back on it, I'm not sure. Enemy controller is a card I've never felt comfortable using. Like, that was a card I have always been afraid of misplaying. Card's a little bit more straightforward. So I'd like to cover the side deck first here. So side deck have 3 Phantasmes, and I'll introduce the next card as well. Is 3 Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood. People, I already hear people, okay, this card's for time. Well, yes and no. I bring in this card when there's like 20 minutes left in the round, because this deck takes a while, and you can't really play with the pressure of like having to deck them out fast enough and being behind on life, even though the deck is pretty good at protecting itself as well. But it makes you don't have to do awkward plays when you have this. This is also a way of protecting you, because like I presented it as a protected Jowgen deck, but it does happen quite a lot actually that they do break the first Jowgen, and even sometimes the second. But all the time that has been wasted, and resources that have been wasted at this point, they make it so that they start to lose to Runick. Their deck is half destroyed, and then my deck is cleared of everything but Runick. So at this point, they won't have the time anymore. This buys time. Phantasme for every deck that can link is a way both sides so that I can get to Dogwood more, because there's no card that does the same as this. So this was the best way to try and get faster to it during the first turn. So those are maybe additional copies of Dogwood. That was the intention, and I'm pretty happy with the results. Then there's a card probably nobody has ever seen. It's Gendo the Ascetic Monk. This card is for one reason only, is that imagine you play against Fluwanderies. Your deck doesn't do anything. Like, you have to beat them with pure runics, probably. Like, maybe you can pull it off, but your judgments get very, very worse. This card is a spellcaster. It's level 4, so it requires 1 more judgment spell activation under judgment to summon it. But it makes it that attack position monsters cannot activate their effects. And while it's in defense, it can be destroyed by card effects, can be targeted by card effects. So you summon it off of judgment, and then suddenly every flu monster doesn't do anything. So that was the reason it was there. I had no spots to put two, follow the same theory as the two Jowgens in the main deck. But if I do play against Flu, I think I do have to be pretty lucky because I assume that I lose game one, but I can dedicate that much slots to one matchup that I probably won't face, and I didn't face it. But there was some around me that were playing Flu. Shout out to Henko. Then there's the 3 Cyframe Gear Epsilon, the 1 Cyframe Gear Gamma, and Driver. Leave the Gamma on the side for right now. This is just the engine requirement. Epsilon, because you're playing 35 spells. If you queue into Labyrinth, they're going to Eradicator you and win. So this card makes it so that you don't lose, and this is always going to be resolved during your turn. So it also gives you 2 bodies on the field. Sometimes you can't wait to use it on Eradicator, because if they summon Lovely first, you won't be able to respond to Eradicator with this. So sometimes you have to decide, okay, they don't have a love. They're like, are they setting up Lovely before it? Usually they don't. What happened every time I played against Labyrinth and I had this is that this summoned Lady Labyrinth, and during my draw phase, activate Eradicator, activate Epsilon, and that's pretty game breaking right there. So that's something I had to respect playing this, because Labyrinth is a deck that exists. This is the deck that I played against the most, actually. I played against 3 Labyrinth, beat all 3 of them, and resolved Epsilon against 2 of them, I think. 2 of them? No, I think against all 3 of them. And then the Gamma, with the Driver, and Called by the Grave were the cards that I was putting in when I was going first in place of Droplets, because at this point, I'd rather having sure my combo works out. And Droplet obviously has an application going first because it can protect Jowgen. But it does it's way less efficient when you're going first. Your opponent's going to try to stop you, so drawing any of these cards pretty good. I've resolved Gamma twice during my turn, won both of those games. I never do Called by the Grave though, but I would play it again. I think the theory is correct in this one, because you want to trade your few going second card for going first cards. And then there's 2 slots left. I had a very specific need. It was having something going second versus Rescue Ace that blocks Preventer and Contain, especially the second part of Contain, because the Runicks really suffer from that, is that you summon Hugin and they either Preventer it face down or use Contain on the Hugin. Your extra monster zone is locked, so that gives you way less opportunities. And the only card I could find is, you're going to say, okay, that's very obvious, but was evenly matched. It can only afford 2 in the side deck. It's a Runic deck that usually can't side that many cards anyway. But this was the job I had for it. I did not play against Rescue Ace. Did bring it evenly a few times, not a lot. Activated with once, would play it again. That was a need that I thought was pretty important. Have something against that specific scenario. I found no other card that could deal both with Preventer and Contain at the same time. So this was the best one. And then finally, we have the extra deck. With the first SP Little Knight. Not a lot of links in this deck. You're playing a link monster, might as well be this one. And sometimes you have Little Knight up while you set up Jowgen after it. It's a good way to protect it, at least if your opponent does try to activate some effects. Then there's this card. This is the one card in my extra deck that I would not play again. It's Celine, Master of the Queen of Magicians. I had multiple considerations for this card. I wanted to play something I could summon with my Cyframes. So first thing that comes to your mind is playing Accel Synchro Stardust with Baron. But that requires 2 slots, which was very heavy, and I want all of those cards more than I want that. So I checked every level 8 synchro in the game, and the one that I thought would be pretty great was Stardust Spark Dragon. So later on, you can use it to protect your Jowgen. And I would have summoned it in the tournament. There was one time I really wish it was Star Spark Dragon. My other considerations were Link Spider, to use the driver, like to use the Cypher driver to go with the Cypher monster and go into Little Knight, because it requires effect monsters, so you can't use the driver. And that would have happened as well. There was a point I wanted that card. The last consideration was Gachi Gantetsu, first rank 2 Xyz monster in the game, for a specific reason that protect your Jowgen, sometimes you have to use another Xyz monster. There's one in there I'm going to show you, but with Gachi, you get the protection permanently. It goes to 1700 defense, and there's very few normal summonable monsters in the meta that beats it. Labyrinth can beat it, like Ariana can't beat it anymore. So you go Gachi and Jowgen, suddenly they can't beat you anymore, ever. You don't have to work out to protect you from them having 2 Arianas, for instance. Sorry. But then there's a few 1800 monsters in the meta. The Vanquishal Raisin has 1800, so that would negate the purpose of Gachi, and the Fire King Harvata has also 1800. So in the metagame, with monster with 17 or below, Gachi would probably be pretty great, but in this case, I didn't pick it, and did not pick Link Spider or Star Spark Dragon. So it would have been Link Spider or Star Spark. Probably Star Spark, I think, would have been better than this. Then there's 2 Hugin. 2 is definitely the correct number. Never came up for a third. A third never came up. There's Munin. That is one way that you can emulate the effect of Spooky Dogwood. Just puts you ahead, so you don't have to play weirdly once the clock starts running down. And sometimes the protection effect, if you set it up, does come up, but it's mostly for the life point gain. But it's not something you just want to do during the time turns. Like I was sometimes summoning it like with 15 minutes left on the clock, just to have the comfort of having the time to take them out. Then there's Jerry. I, funnily enough, never activated the effect to get back Fountain, but the other effect acts as good removal. You can do the trick to enter battle phase and then activate a Runick. So that's the battle phase of your next turn, and then crash with this to bait something. And then there's the last Runick, which is probably the most, aside from Hugin, obviously, the most important in his deck, is Sleipnir, the Runick main. Remember, I talk a lot about protecting that Jowgen? Well, Sleipnir does that. You just summon Sleipnir with any of your Runicks, powering up your Spellbook of Judgment in the process during your turn, and then summon Jowgen during the end phase. So this blanks an attack every time, because you get to banish it with their monster during the battle phase. So that's already one attack. Then you have Slumber to protect for additional attacks. So it turns your bad Runicks that won't be able to protect your Jowgen, like Freezing Curse or Flashing Fire, into an actual way to protect it. You just have to do it before you summon the Jowgen. And this was great. Extremely important. Then we go to the Xyz part of the deck. I mentioned earlier there was another Xyz monster designed to protect Jowgen. This is it. Armored Kappa. And this was MVP. It's not a monster I summoned during all my matches, but there is some matches that I summoned it like every game. This, I usually don't say what the cards say in these profiles. This one I think I'm going to do. Has an ignition effect where you can detach one and tom its attack or defense by 1000 permanently. But the effect that's important is that during the battle step, when an attack is declared, involving one of your monsters, you can use that the other effect, discard a card from your hand, and your monsters cannot be destroyed by battle and you take no damage for this turn. So this is a once per duel effect, actually. So like that's how broken it is, because if it was not, this would have been on my field almost every game. So there are some times you don't get away another Runick to Sleipnir, you don't have access to Slumber, so you use your Magician of Prophecy and your Hugin, summon Armored Kappa, so then you can to protect your Jowgen the next turn, and then after that with your follow-up from Judgment, maybe, and your draw for turn, maybe get a Runick, Knowledge, draw 2 after having thinned your deck, now you probably have Runics to protect your Jowgen. So this card was extremely important, and I'm pretty happy that I played it. This was Jordan's idea once again, like this exact extra deck. The only card I would change is Celine. Mannequin Cat is the point. The last thing I was unsure about playing this deck before I learned about this is, you get hard punished by Jowgen Lockbird, but well, what's the type of Jowgen Lockbird? That's a spellcaster. So you get the Mannequin Cat, the Jowgen Lockbird, and summon Jowgen from your deck. So even if you get locked out of a Resolving Judgment, you still get to put them on the Jowgen lock. So probably, maybe you can protect it if that happens. Maybe you can. Maybe you have just another Runic before, so you can turn Sleipnir, and that protects your Jowgen, and that's fine. But even if you maybe blanking their battle phase will, if you have only that, will be enough to give you enough time to reset up. Then is the 5-card Ghost Trick Engine, which is Ghost Trick, So Cute Boss, in the 2 copies of Angel of Mischief, the 1 Utopic Future, and the 1 Draco Future. So remember, in the deck there was this card called Ghost Trick Shot. So this allows you to use your level 2s, your Hugin and your Spellbook Magician, to summon an effect negation before activating Judgment. Sometimes you don't have the choice. Your hand's too weak, you have to run Judgment and hope for the best. But sometimes your hand's good. So you get to that point, to him on board before activating Judgment, and now you can't get Ash. If they had Droll, they would have done it before that, but it prevents Ash on Judgment, which is actually pretty devastating. Sometimes you have to run Judgment first, and it allows you to turn your level 2s into a spell activation. Because if you activate Judgment before, when you use a shot during a combo, that's one more spell. How the combo works is you use your 2 level 2s, your Magician and your Hugin, into So Cute Boss, and you summon your first Angel of Mischief. You detach the So Cute Boss, activate Shot, get the So Cute Boss back, summon another Angel on top of So Cute Boss, and then you overlay those into F-Zero and F-Zero into Draco Future. Draco Future, like, it's big, has 3,000. You're almost never going to attack with it. You could, but it's very long. You'll rather dig them out. But it does something else. Sometimes you don't have any way to protect Jowgen from battle, but you summon Draco Future during your turn. So that makes it that they have to commit a normal summon to rush your Jowgen. So first they need to have it. In decks these days, there's not that many monsters you want to normal summon. So that means there are not that many monster outs to Jowgen. And all those monsters almost have an unsummon effect. But if they activate a monster effect on field, you get to negate it and take control of it. So they have to blank their battle phase, blank their normal summon, and not plus over it. So that also gives you the time, if you don't have everything, to get to the point where you get to really establish a lock. Like, if the first Jowgen doesn't do it, the second will, and this will help mitigate some value. And finally, the last card is Typhon. Does have some usefulness, obviously, against the combo decks. I did summon it only once, but I would play it again. So this is the deck, and honestly, I went all week trying to decide what I wanted to play, what I could have fun with, what I could show off the opponents. And I had a blast. Like, very, very happy with this deck. Every button, like, it clicked every button, and I got lucky when I needed to be. I played well when I needed to, except for that one time when I used Forbidden Droplet on a Farking Ponix to half attack, thinking my Jowgen would survive, Jowgen in attack mode. But that's besides the point. For those that are interested, my matchups were Manadium round 1, which I lost. I lost the die roll and won the 2 games that I was going second. And then I won against Labyrinth. Round 3, I won against Fire King. Then I won against Labyrinth in round 4. I won against Fire King in round 5. I won against Labyrinth in round 6. I won against Purely in round 7. And I drew with Sprite Adventure in round 8 to get 6-1-1, 7th place. There was 8 rounds, 210 players, so biggest Montreal regionals ever. Have the time for maybe just one moment that made my day is there has been quite a few times that I did use some spoke of judgment during my opponent's turns when I didn't my turn didn't go as well with the plan of activating judgment as a spell max C and hope to survive or use maybe some runics to survive and plus off of this. And my purely opponent gave me 6 spells off of this during his turn. So I started my turn with 7 cards in hand and Jowgen and blew up the field and then got a concession. So you can use this during your opponent's turn. And while it's not max C right away during the end phase, if they went in, I assure you, it will win you the game.
Amazing. Well, thank you again for the deck profile. Really, really insightful. I'm sure the viewers will appreciate it as well. Any final words?
Yes. I do want to say, like, I know there's a lot of players, kind of like me, that do like to play rogue decks, like to improve on them, and like to show them off. But it's also a strength sometimes to just, hey, I don't have to be right about everything. I see someone that has all the right arguments to present me, and they feel right to me. They're the kind of arguments I'm looking for to play a deck for card selection in that deck. And sometimes just okay to just accept that, like, yeah, that's the right receipt, and that's what happened this time. So I don't want to take any credit for the creation of this deck. It goes to Jordan, which I mentioned earlier. So I really glad it worked out, had a blast. Going to play this deck for a short while now. So hopefully you get to try it, terrorize your locals with it. Like, funnily enough, for a stun deck, most people were like pretty impressed with like the kind of match that it gave. Had pretty fun matches overall. So give it a try.
Awesome. Thank you.